Hi, and welcome to Good to Great Grant Writing. My name is Dr. Julie Cwikla. I'm the Director of Creativity and Innovation in STEM at the University of Southern Mississippi. I work with our Vice President for Research Office to help stimulate programs, interdisciplinary work across campus, outside of campus with a variety of partners. And I hope some of the strategies that I've learned earning federal and state monies as well as local and regional foundational monies will help push your grant writing game to the next level. I'm going to begin with an interesting tweet from Professor Marsh, who I think she and I would be very good friends. I keep this close by. I think it's a terrific reminder that this is really hard work and that we're not in the trenches alone. This is not easy work for anybody in the grant writing game. I'm going to begin here with a little bit of housekeeping. RFP stands for Request for Proposals. That is the document that agencies put out when they have a bucket of money to give out to meet their mission. It has research references, it has budgets, it has deadlines, font sizes, all kinds of tax information that may or may not be needed from your institution. All your guidelines are going to be in that RFP. The second thing is PI. That's a principal investigator. This is typically the lead researcher or the lead program director, and also is typically the person who does the majority of the proposal writing itself. The third thing is SPO or SPA, which is your sponsored programs office or administration. They are people that may be at your agency or institution to help you submit the RFP documents. In particular, the budget, the tax documents, the budget justification, and will help them make sure all those are in line so that your proposal does not get kicked back for missing one little tiny paragraph or form or statement. I have divided this talk into 3 sections that parallel the sections in my book: art, architecture, and attitude. So the first section, art, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the creativity and the mindsets that are necessary when you are writing to sell, when you are selling your idea. It's very different from other academic and scientific writing. The second is architecture, how we structure a proposal, the audiences for different sections, and how we should be thinking about the proposal even before we start writing that first sentence. And lastly is attitude, some things around resilience, some things around negative reviews, and how we can use that feedback to up our game, to resubmit, and to keep going on this grant writing path. So I'm going to start here with art. Art is the application of creative skill and imagination. So most of the writing that you've probably done in research reports or peer-reviewed journal articles has been about research that's done in the past. You're writing a report, you are sharing analyses that you've already done. But the point is that everything has already been completed. And now you're figuring out a way to organize that information for a reader. When you're writing a grant proposal, you're writing about the future. So it's your job to imagine the possible. Imagine all the possible outcomes. Can you predict what's going to happen with your data set? And so you are not just reflecting on what's already been done. You are imagining, you're predicting, and trying to convince the reader why this is a great idea and why this needs to be done now. And along those same lines, with a grant proposal, you're writing to sell an idea. You're not holding up some shiny thing and saying, buy this. You're saying, trust in me that I can build this great, beautiful, shiny thing, and that down the road, it will impact your foundation, or it will contribute to the mission that you are trying to achieve. So when we are thinking about writing to sell, we really need to convince the reader that we're capable of doing this work by showing pilot data that we've done before, by producing articles and research papers and projects that we've already accomplished with our team or with our institution or with this particular partner that we're working with. And one really important thing to think about when you are writing to sell is picture your reader. You know, I think sometimes we submit proposals to these big agencies and it sounds like a skyscraper in the sky, right? The National Science Foundation, NIH, DOE, the reality is these are people. And you are sending your proposal in so that real people, scientists just like you and me, can read the proposals and decide what is the kind of work they really want to champion. Who are the research teams that they believe can achieve these important missions that these federal and state organizations are trying to accomplish? And so, you know, your reader might be a single mom like I was, juggling graduate students and kids and making dinner and soccer. It might be a full professor who just loves reading about cutting edge research and new ideas that are emerging from the field. And, it could be It could be a new researcher who is interested in this new RFP and finding out more about the kinds of projects that an agency are going to champion going forward. So really think about all those reviewers and try to find ways to speak to all those different types of people. And always picture your reader. This is really a conversation that you're having with all those individual readers. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 20. But be thinking there's a real person on the other end of this academic conversation. Now that said, your proposal is going to be in a stack of 10, 20, maybe 50 proposals that the reader is looking at. You want to stand out as soon as you possibly can. And to do that, I always suggest tell the punchline first. This is what I want to do. This is why it's important. And this is why I'm the best person to get the work done. There are 3 things you want to accomplish in your first 3 sentences in your proposal. The first thing is you want to evoke emotion. You want to make sure that that reader cares immediately. You have made them care about this work. The second is create credibility, and I mentioned that before. You want the reader to feel that you are going to be responsible and thoughtful and a good mentor for these monies. You're going to make sure that these monies work for the agency to achieve their mission. And the third thing is you want to inspire action. Action for that reviewer to move your proposal to the top of their review pile. And also action to get the work done now, that there should be some urgency about this work. We can't wait 5 years to start this project. This work needs to be done now. So as you're thinking about crafting that punchline and all the words throughout your 15-page proposal, I like to think about this terrific review written in the New York Times when they reviewed Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. It's a truly gripping story told in lean, hard, athletic prose. I don't know that a better book review has ever been written. Lean, hard, athletic. These are exactly the things you want your words doing for you in a grant proposal. Because every word matters. You have 15, maybe 25 pages to describe a 5-year project. I mean, it almost sounds like a ridiculous task, right? You are going to describe all this research that you've done up until this point in time. You're going to set a framework, paint a picture of where this fits in the field. Then you're going to describe all the data you're going to collect, all the analyses you're going to do, and then how you're going to share that data with the public and what the broader impacts of this work are going to be. So this is a very, very challenging task, and that's why every word needs to be lean, hard, athletic, and working for you, selling your idea. And that said, let's go back just a little bit and think about those readers again. As I said, I want this to be a conversation. Imagine your academic hero. You, as a grant writer, have the opportunity to have an hour-long conversation with your academic hero. They're going to sit down with your proposal, maybe over a cup of coffee in the morning, and you have an hour to share with them your new great idea. Think about this as the most academic, rigorous conversation and sales pitch you have ever done with your academic hero and the researcher that you want to convince that this is really, really important work. And unlike a peer-reviewed journal article, when you submit an article to your top-tier journal, there will be a panel of reviewers, but their area of expertise will be highly aligned with your paper. You might have even cited them in the work that they're reading. So they have a very good feel of what's going on. When you submit to an agency or a foundation a grant proposal, that panel of reviewers, their cone of expertise is a bit wider than on a peer-reviewed journal article. And so you want to make sure that you are placing this in your specific field, but also a little bit wider, and make your so what speak to a wider audience than it would in a peer-reviewed journal article. And one way I involve my readers in the review process is I ask them questions. Because when you're reading a story and someone asks you a question, you are automatically involved in that story. You're automatically involved in that research project. Now, your answers might differ from the writers, but you are engaging that reader by asking them a question as you go. Another thing to think about when you're thinking about proposals as a conversation with your academic hero is to think about the cadence of your writing. And are you writing really, really, really long sentences? Are you writing short, choppy sentences? You want to mix those up. You want the flow to sound nice on your ear and on the reader's ear, because as they're reading that proposal, they're hearing their words in their mind. And so you really want this to flow as nicely as you possibly can. I always encourage writers to read their proposal out loud. Always read it out loud. Some writers even record them to see, how does this sound? If it sounds funny in your mind or on your ear, it probably needs to be rewarded. And I often talk about the breath test. If you have to take a breath during a sentence, it's just simply too long. Now there might be extremely long sentences where you might be listing out multiple components of a project, multiple aims or objectives. But in that case, you're going to be using semicolons and colons and commas, hopefully. But if you have a sentence where you have to breathe or breathe twice, it is just simply too long. And that's going to really tax your reader. And remember, you're one of 20 in this pile. You want your reader to read your proposal smoothly and quickly and be so engaged and engrossed with your work that they don't even think about breathing, or they don't get tired when they're reading it. They're so inspired as they're reading. Section number 2, architecture. The practice of designing and constructing. So people often ask me, where do you start? Where do you get your idea for a grant proposal? Where do you start the writing process? How do you start constructing this big, huge thing? If you're a new academic or a new researcher, you get examples of proposals that have been funded and you're looking at this beautiful 25-page document, well-referenced, well-footnotes, beautiful charts and diagrams. It doesn't start that way. This is a very, very messy process. Just like science is messy and unpredictable, writing is a very messy process and takes a long time to craft and edit and really beautify those sentences as much as you possibly can. But when I'm starting a new proposal, or I'm starting a new project, or I'm thinking about writing about a new project, I always start with the idea. And I encourage you to do the same. Figure out, what is it that you want to know? What is it that you are ready and willing and excited about investing 3 to 5 years of your life to investigate or learn about? Who do you want to help? Who do you want to serve in your communities? Who do you want to serve on a state, regional, or national level? Who is it that you want to impact with your work, with your science, with your writing? And so for me, when you start with the idea that you love, when you start with a project that you love and you pull in team members who you think are also on that same mindset that you are, when that project gets funded 6 months from now, you're going to be excited to do that work. And you're not going to feel kind of on the fence. So start with the idea and the thing that you really want to understand. What is the brick you want to put in the wall in your field? What is it that you want to be known for? What is it that you want to accomplish? And really begin there. And if you want, sketch some of these ideas now. If you're watching this afterwards, pause this video and really sit down and think about, what is it that I want to know? What do I want to accomplish? And begin from there. I've always used sort of the image of an hourglass to think about how I structure my writing. An hourglass is wide at the top, wide at the bottom, and narrow in the middle. And I think this is a really nice sort of image for me as I think about not only how I structure each one of the sentences and how I structure each one of the sections and how they fit together, but the audiences for each one of those sections and how my audience might change a little bit. Even though I'm still writing to the audience of my reviewers, the audience for my language is going to change a little bit. So let me explain how I work on that. So here you'll see some more details put into this hourglass. So right from the beginning, you want to tell that punchline first, okay? You want to hook your reader right at the beginning. You want to make them care. You want to tell them how this fits in a global perspective. You want to tell them who's going to be impacted by this terrific work and this terrific research program that you're putting together. As we move down that funnel, you see you're going to provide literature background. You want to show that you know your stuff. You know the field. You're going to walk your reader step by step from the literature to your research questions. You're going to include any pilot data that you can to show that you know what you're doing, to show that you've tested out some methods and now you're ready to do this particular work. And then the research questions. I'll come back and talk about these a little bit, but the research questions are the heart of your work. And that's exactly where you are driving your reader to and from. And then after the research questions, you're going to talk about your method, your analyses, what kind of equipment you're going to need, how you're going to analyze that data, how you're going to share it. And then at the end, you're sort of going to wrap up thinking about who cares about this work, or who should care, and how am I going to help people become aware of this research, and sort of the global impact, or national or regional or field impact that this work is going to have, and why this is important, and why it is highly aligned with the agency's goals and missions. So back to research questions. Your research questions should be so lean and so succinct, no jargon, no pontificating, and that language should speak to any scientist anywhere in any field. I should be able to pick up your proposal, read your research questions and say, oh, I understand what she's doing. And typically when I'm reviewing a research proposal, I like to begin with the abstract and the summary, and then I often just hop right to the research questions because I want to see the heart of the work. I want to know, where are you driving me? And sometimes I allude to my research questions even in my introduction. They might not be fully written out, but I will allude to, this is the challenge, or this is the problem that we are trying to address, or this is the question that we are interested in achieving with these monies. But your research questions, you should be able to share those with any other academic, with any other scientist, and they should be very crystal clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Now, they might not understand all of the literature that you're citing. They might not understand the methods or even know about the equipment that you're using, but they should understand what it is that you're going to achieve with this $1 million that you are requesting just by reading your research questions. And the research questions are never really finished. They are never perfect. So that punchline, those research questions, I am working on those from the very beginning until the very, very end, because they can always get better. They can always, always get better. So in addition to being a fantastic scientist and someone who is, well immersed in your literature and in your field, you also have to be a good storyteller. Because what you're doing in that conversation with your academic hero is you are telling the story of this work and why it's important and how you and your research team got here. So here's the pilot work that I've done. Here's the literature and the things I've published over the past 2 to 5 years that are related to this work. And you are telling them a rich, beautiful story of what it is that you are dreaming of, what you imagine is possible, what you imagine are the next steps in this line of work. And so a scientist, a writer, a copy editor, and now a storyteller. It's a lot to try to accomplish, but remember, if you picture your reader, if you picture this as a conversation, think of your proposal as the best story you have ever told. To help me with some of my work, I sketch ideas all the time. I sketch them visually, and I am not an artist, I can assure you, but I sketch literature concepts. Perhaps they are ideas that I've not been able to articulate in words yet, but I look at pictures and how varieties of concepts might be related. I sketch plan of work, maybe an experimental design, how experiment 1 is going to be analyzed and then those results used in experiment 2, or how 1 and 2 are then going to impact 3. So any kind of sketching like that is extremely helpful for me in my thinking on the spot, as well as using my drawing as a thinking tool when I come back. And I highly, highly suggest that because, again, you are one proposal in a stack of 20. And so if you can summarize difficult concepts into a visual, into a diagram, into tables for readers, sometimes you can actually make it easier for your reader, number 1. But number 2, you can pack more information into a diagram than if you had explained all of that literature or explained that course of work. So I encourage you to use sketches and diagrams as much as you possibly can to break up that dense text that inevitably you have to include in a academic research proposal. This also helps me with my method and my analyses. Sketching out that calendar. What am I doing in semester 1, semester 2, in the summer? etc., academic year 1. And so use those charts and those tables to sketch out what your method is, what your analysis is, and your calendar of events. I'm going to get these data, then I'm going to analyze these, then I'm going to write and submit to these journals. Or then I'm going to do this type of outreach that's related to those components in the project itself. One thing that I do when I have either a large section of the text written or the whole proposal is I copy, cut and paste all the text from my proposal, and I put it in a word cloud. Now these are available freely on the internet, and what they do, if you're not familiar, the largest words indicate the frequency. So for example, this is a word cloud of my book, and these are terms that I want my readers to be hearing in their mind as they're reading about grant writing. Work, research, can, time, proposal, will, writing, right? So look at your proposal, cut and paste into a word cloud, and make sure the words that are jumping out at you are the ones that you want your reader to hear over and over and over again. So funny story, so I did this for the first time years ago. And one of the largest words, if not the largest word, was the word just. And I was absolutely floored and embarrassed that that was the largest word in my proposal. So that meant the word just was appearing more than anything else. Not interdisciplinary, not innovative, not creative, not mathematics or chemistry or science or anything, the word just. So a word cloud is a terrific way to pick up on your writing crutches, right? So you don't know that you use the word just all the time, or you don't know that maybe you've used some other very bland words like very, words that are not really communicating what it is you want your academic hero to hear or to read about. You know, and be thinking again about that reader. What do you want them to hear in their mind? What is the word and the keys and the phrases you want them to associate with your name and your proposal? Okay, and our last section, attitude. A general way of thinking and feeling about something. So if you have not gotten a grant proposal rejected yet, it will happen. Probably if you write more than 3, it will happen. And if you have gotten accepted on your first couple of ones, congratulations, that is absolutely terrific. This is a game, and one thing I try to tell, especially junior faculty or people starting off in this business, is that there are winners and losers, but the agency and you are on the same team. You both want to do good. You both want to achieve the same mission. You both want to contribute to your field. And so remember, you are on the same team, and that if you didn't win this time, there's no reason that you won't win next time. So understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and that your writing can always be improved. Writing is never perfect. A draft is never perfect. I'm sure all of you have been there. You know, you hit submit on something, and it could just be an email. I think, oh no, I've missed that typo. With a grant proposal, you might have worked on that for 6, 9, 12 months. And there have been times when I submit it and there's still some typo in there. I can't believe it. It is never truly finished. So remember, give yourself time and you know, and the ability to make mistakes and the freedom to make mistakes and know that that's going to happen. That is part of this game, this writing and grant writing game. One mentality that I do adhere to is really a startup mentality. I think of myself as an educational entrepreneur, as a research entrepreneur. So I am looking for people who want to do work that I think is important and critical to make this world a better place. And so I use little monies that I have, whether they are, you know, startup funds or smaller proposals or smaller pots of money that we have, to fail fast, to do experiments, to find out what works, what doesn't work. And in some cases, even to work with teammates, to work with new other co-PIs or a new project manager to see, how is this team gelling? How is this work gonna work out for all of us? How is this team gonna come together? Because that way, when the big money comes in, I will feel confident with that team, with those methods, with that location, with that nonprofit partner, perhaps. So really try to, again, lean, hard, athletic. Do things quickly, fail fast, but fail forward as you're working on these things. You want to develop a grant writing ego, and that's some of what I just talked about. That is, you are going to get nasty reviews, you're going to get negative reviews, and learning how to be resilient about those. And know that you will win. The win is coming, and you just have to understand that this is, this is not personal. You and the agency are on the same team, and this is business. They want to figure out, where can I invest my money the best to help XYZ or to forward this particular field. And so know that you are, you can help the agency achieve that mission, and that there are other really good people doing really good work as well. And sometimes they're going to win, and sometimes you're going to win. And your job is to keep crafting that idea and strengthening that idea so that next time you can be in that winner's circle. So people often ask me, I have jobs and multiple projects and family, and I try to have a life. Where do you find time to write grant proposals? And I'm sure some of you are working full-time for a nonprofit, and maybe your institution, organization just wants to get some grant monies to do this new thing or to try out this new thing. And so I really encourage you to grab writing time whenever you can. I find that a lot of people, when they start writing, they think, okay, we're gonna get the team together on Friday, we're gonna work all day Friday, we're gonna write that grant proposal. Or a junior faculty thing, I'm gonna stay home on Friday, I'm gonna get that whole literature review done, I'm gonna get that whole method section done, or that 3-day weekend, I'm gonna bang out that grant proposal. Again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I grab time. I always have my little journal with me. And you might see me on the side of the soccer field writing for 20 minutes while the team is warming up. And I might be working on crafting and recrafting those research questions, or working on that punchline. And so you are, your mind, you can't turn off your mind when you have a great idea. So work on it whenever the idea comes. Always have paper and pencil nearby so that you can craft and recraft, and so that those thoughts don't escape you when you are stepping into your car after the grocery store and you want to write something down quickly, or you're in the middle of a meeting. And remember that whether it's grant proposals, peer-reviewed journal articles, whether it's scientific policy work you're doing, writing is king. Be a scientist and a researcher who writes. Don't be afraid of that. My father-in-law was a soil scientist with, he passed away with well over 300 peer-reviewed publications. And he worked for a government agency, and I said, Jerry, how did you do that? 300 papers. And he said to me, if I don't write about it, nobody knows I did it. It was so simple and so wise. So be a scientist who writes, because the more you write, the more you practice your writing, you practice that craft, your grant proposals are going to be better, your journal articles are going to be better, you're going to write books about your area, and you can practice your writing with anything, really. One of the activities I have in my book is I say, write about what you ate for last night for dinner. Just write about it. Write about it in extreme detail so that my mouth starts watering, thinking about your amazing curry dish you cooked up last night for your family. So learn to be descriptive and to use words, again, that bring that reader right to the work, bring them right to your ideas and the importance of that work. Now, there are many components. Oh, excuse me, my clicker here. There are many components to a research proposal, and know that they are not all created equally challenging. So, for example, I like to think about my cognitive load. And so some of the things we've talked about so far, the research questions, the punchline, these are very, very cognitively taxing. And like I said, they're never really done. Developing a budget is kind of easy, right? You can play with some numbers in Excel, maybe writing about the work you've already done, writing about your pilot work. Some of those things are a little bit easier. So really know yourself and know when you're at your best, because that's when you want to work on the tasks that are the most challenging within a research proposal. So I've ranked here the proposal components, and this is just sort of how I view them. You might have a slightly different view. But you can see, when you think about really concise, succinct writing like an abstract, that's going to be very, very challenging, because again, every word matters. Every word needs to be working for you. You want a reviewer to read your abstract and be excited about reading the rest of the proposal. I've read some proposals that are almost apologetic. I almost can envision the researchers sort of going, wincing as they hit submit or push the proposal across the table. So don't be afraid of your writing. Don't be afraid to be bold. You are trying to sell this idea. Be proud of what it is that you've put together. And also really think about trying to manage that time so that you can address all of these different components, because an NIH, an NSF proposal, there are so many components, it can seem overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. So again, do the things like a budget and a budget justification when you're tired. Those are easy things to describe. Describe that, you know, $200,000 piece of equipment that you need to purchase for particular analyses. Write down the proposal, play with those numbers. And so do those things when you're tired. Don't do those things first thing in the morning, or, you know, sometimes people are best after they exercise or they've had their third cup of coffee. So really know yourself, and then try to cut up your day so that you're doing these components at the time that matches the cognitive load for each of these sections. So in speaking of money, you know, people often ask me, especially a new faculty member writing their first research proposals, Julie, can I really ask for that much money? You know, or they think, you know, maybe the RFP was, you know, had a cap at $1 million. And I said, well, I'm only going to ask for $750 because, you know, I feel like that might give me a better chance of getting funded. And both wrong. The agency has $1 million to maybe fund 10 projects, let's say. They are ready to assign those monies to the best research teams and the best ideas that are coming forward. What they are looking for is a reasonable budget that aligns with the work. So the work and the money need to flow together, right? So you're doing this work in the summer, you're doing this work in the academic time, or you're hiring this consultant to do X, Y, Z. The money just needs to follow the work. And you need to be realistic, right? So you're not going to save the world with $10 million. You're certainly not going to do it with a $150,000 grant. So be realistic with what it is that you can accomplish, and be realistic with your budget. Make sure you're asking for, you know, if you have a heavy teaching load, make sure you describe that and why you need more release time. Or if you don't have a lot of overhead support, or you need office supplies, don't be afraid to ask for anything. Just justify it and be realistic. Because the worst thing that can happen, right, is that the agency says yes, you get the monies, and then you realize you don't have enough money to meet the promises that you have given the agency. And you don't want that to happen. So be realistic with the budget. The money should follow the work, and the justification should follow. I need this $100,000 piece of equipment. The $25,000 isn't going to cut it because of this and this and this. Okay. And also know that as a reviewer, on the cover sheet, I might know how much money the team is asking for, but I don't look at the budget until I love the idea, until I love the research questions, until I love the whole research experiment, the whole research design. So a reviewer is going to want to fall in love with the work before they even look at the proposal. So they're not going to say, oh, $750, this must be a good, I'm going to give this proposal some extra points. They are just like you and me. They want to champion and find good work, and they want to help the agency solve their problem. The agency has a problem. They have money and work that they think is important, that they want to invest in their community. And you as a grant writer can be that solution. You can say, I can take that $1 million and here's what I can do with it. And let me show you all the things I've already done up until now. And that's why you can trust me and my organization to get this done. The unfortunately email. So it's happened at least on 2 occasions, perhaps 3. I've received emails from the National Science Foundation at 8:55 p.m. on a Friday evening. I've probably had a dinner and a glass of wine with my family, and stupid me, I pick up my phone, and there it is. Dear Dr. Julie Cwikla, unfortunately. And so I don't need to read any further, right? And whether it's self-preservation or blissful ignorance, I'm not sure, but I immediately close the email. If I have co-PIs or other people I need to alert, I send a quick text or an email and say, hey, we didn't get those monies. I'll follow up with reviews when I'm ready. And, you know, I think with reviews, in particular, of course, negative reviews, if it was a congratulations email or a we're happy to inform you, it would be a different reaction. You know, but we go through almost the same stages that we go through with grief, right? You have, this is your baby. This is the project that you love. This is the work that you find important. And so you know, and speaking with other colleagues that, you know, kind of talking about, gosh, how do you debrief after you get negative reviews, or after you know, when you first get that unfortunately email, and you go through a little bit of sort of denial and shock, like, if they didn't fund my work, who did they fund? I mean, who else is out there? How did they read the right file? You know, you just sort of, you kind of go through this deflection process a little bit, and even anger, like, they must not have read my proposal. And at some point, you know, you go back, and sometimes for me, it's the next day, or maybe it's a couple weeks, or maybe it's in a couple months. If I'm busy and I'm working on other projects, and I think, you know what, I'll get back to that in a couple months when we're ready to resubmit. But then at some point, I go through really a kind of a reconstruction phase, where I really go through and cull through those reviews and find out, where is it that I missed the mark? Where is it that for some reason the reader didn't understand? And that's not the reader's fault, right? That's my fault. I didn't communicate that particular component of the project, or I didn't clarify how that work was going to flow and what that relationship was going to look like with the partner. So they didn't really they didn't think I thought through that, even though I had. Or maybe I didn't show enough of my pilot data to show, you know, demonstrate the credibility of my team. So really go through those reviews, you know, and every once in a while you get some, you know, just some negative reviewer that might have a nasty comment or something. Just know that, you know, that's not about you. That's about that particular reviewer. But in most cases, again, these reviewers are just like you and me. And I know when I see in particular a young team trying to work together and put forward a new idea, I give as much feedback as I can. Or I point out, here's some literature or some things you might want to look at. Or here are some people I know doing this kind of work that I don't think you've looked at what they're doing. Why don't you bring them in as a mentor on your project? Or even better, and I've gotten this terrific advice, people will say, here's an RFP that I think is a better match for this work. Why don't you look there instead? And so some reviewers are just absolutely generous. And so sometimes the review process itself can be worth the struggle of writing your grant proposal, because you get such rich academic feedback really from experts in your field. And they are helping you to really craft and mold that idea to become something even stronger moving forward. So now I'd like to open up for any questions, comments that you have about anything I've talked about, or sort of grant writing in general. I've tried to just sort of give a snapshot and some of the nuggets and strategies that I use, but I'd like to really hear what's on your mind. And if you don't want to ask here in public, know that you can find me at juliecwikla.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. This is my book, Good to Great Grant Writing. It is available everywhere books are sold. And there are some other resources on my webpage that link to, for example, the word cloud I talked about. I have some of these timelines that are there, some things that would help you just get going and get some templates and have some words and some charts on the screen to help you really shape and move your idea forward. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your questions. Okay, we have a question here about the difference between submitting a proposal to a pure scientific agency, NIH or NSF, versus a foundation. So, as a scientist, NIH, NSF, NASA, DOE, DOD, these are going to be very, very dense, scientifically laden proposals. You are really going to think of these as, again, you're writing to your academic hero. You are including all kinds of research that you have reviewed and that you understand and that you're going to incorporate. Very, very, very dense in the literature in particular. And so when you're applying to a foundation, a lot of foundations, and again, these differ by foundation. So what I do encourage you to do is to investigate a foundation. Is this a small family-run foundation? And what do they do? What is the work they funded before? How has their mission changed over time? And some foundations require a decent amount of research background and literature. It's certainly, I've not really seen any that are to the level of intensity and rigor that the National Science Foundation is, for example. But they will want to know that you've thought about the research and the literature. They may be very well versed on it. They may have a team at their foundation that works specifically with your area of expertise. So some of them have online completion forms. It just really varies by foundation. And some foundations are really going to judge your scientific prowess and your background simply on your CV and what you've done. And so that might be part of what you are submitting as a full CV as opposed to a 2-page annotated or a 2-page abbreviated CV. And so they might be using that to sort of judge your knowledge and expertise as opposed to NSF that's going to want to see it very detailed, your work, others' works, how this fits in the field, etc. Okay, and I have another question here about writing tools. So I don't use anything fancy at all. I have my little my pen and paper moleskin that I use. I use Evernote sometimes for some things, but I use EndNote for references, and I really just type things into Word documents. And I actually do a lot of writing with my thumbs on my phone. I email things to myself. I cut and paste them, but I don't think there's any perfect writing tool out there. I think your brain, your ideas, are the perfect writing tool. And there are some, I know there's Scrivener, and I don't even know what all the other tools are for crafting all different kinds of writing projects. I think the best thing, and I really have never had any luck with cutting and pasting from an old proposal, the best thing is to start with that blank page and start with your research questions. What is it that you really want to know? And when you start from there and build out in that hourglass like we talked about, for me, that is the absolute best advice that I can give a promising new researcher. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed today, and please feel free to share and feel free to contact me with any other questions you have. I am easy to find. I think there are only a few Julie Cwiklas in the whole world. So find me, and good luck in the process. And just remember that this is a game, and at some point you're going to get your win. Thanks so much.